We all knew the New York Rangers were going to be active at the trade deadline, but for most of us, we assumed that they were going to be active buyers, not necessarily sellers, and definitely not of their 22-year-old up-and-coming players named Kaapo Kakko, discussing why the New York Rangers are taking calls on him, what they might get in return, and how this will help the team moving forward. Welcome back to Edgework. I'm Zack Phillips, joined here today by Matt Alber, our known Rangers fan here on the Edgework channel. Today we're going to be discussing the new rumors popping out there that Kaapo Kakko could potentially be on the move. Why is this? Why would he be on the move? Would you trade him? What could his value be? We'll get into all of that. But first and foremost, Matt, let's start here. We see the rumors pop up the other day from the Twitter account at DiscussionNYR. They said the New York Rangers are taking calls on Kaapo Kakko ahead of the trade deadline. He's a 22-year-old forward. He's 6'3", 205 pounds, an RFA at the end of the season. He's currently making $2.1 million. What would it be that's making the New York Rangers look at this guy and say, this is a player we have to take calls on ahead of the deadline? Is it just due diligence, seeing what's out there? Are you looking to get out of this guy? Do you not think they can sign him next year? What is it right now that's having the Rangers brass, the Rangers organization, say, we're willing to take trade calls on Kakko?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is kind of based around wanting to figure out what his value is. And I think as the number 2 pick from a few years ago, I think he's obviously kind of fallen short of what his expectations were coming in. I mean, if you remember back to the draft, like there were quite a few people that thought he should have gone number 1. So I think he's kind of come in and he certainly hasn't exceeded those expectations by any means. I mean, if you look at it, right, like he's only broke 40 points for the first time last year. And that was also the only time that he's had more than 10 goals now, this going on his 5th year. So granted, like he has not exactly lived up to the hype. I do think a lot of it is just kind of due diligence though. Like he is obviously kind of on the cheap side right now, kind of making, as you said, 2.1. I think when they look at what it would be to re-sign him, everything I've kind of seen is like he's going to get in maybe like the 3-year, $4 million range, maybe something a little less than what they gave Phillips last year. So I don't think it's necessarily that they're going to struggle to sign him. I think when they look at the roster, like they've tried to find a lot of different fits for him. And I think the best fit that they had found was him playing kind of on the top line with Kreider and Zibanejad, which is a spot that they've struggled to fill over the last few years. Like ever since they lost Pavel Buchnevich and Matt Zuccarello kind of during the rebuild retool that they did, like the only guy that really fit there was Frank Petrano. And Kakko has certainly kind of looked good there at times, but like there are so many other names they tried up there. They tried obviously last year Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko. They tried Alexei Lafreniere up there. They tried Blake Wheeler up there. They tried Jimmy Vesey up there. They tried Will Cooley up there. Like there's just there's so many guys that they've tried that haven't fit well. And like when you look at the Rangers' current roster, Kakko has been the best fit of any of them up there. But I think it's kind of at the point where it's like they're trying to win right now. And I think they're kind of looking at it and saying like, hey, if we are going to maybe get rid of Kakko, is there a way that he can help us bring in a high-end player that we could put up with those two that may be able to help us right now? I don't know if they're even kind of doubting his potential. I think it's more of like, can we help ourselves out right now, knowing that right now you still have Artemi Panarin in his prime, Chris Kreider in his prime, Mika Zibanejad in his prime, Vincent Trocheck in his prime, Igor Shesterkin in his prime. Like I could go on. But I do think a lot of this is like they want to make sure that they're maximizing the primes of all the big guns. And if that means they have to move on from someone like Kakko, who, look, does have a lot of potential, and maybe there's a team out there that sees that, I think that's kind of what the way they're looking at it is like, is there a route out here that helps us get a lot better now?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask kind of go next on is like you're looking at where he's at right now, 5 goals, 1 assist through 28 games played so far this season. Obviously has dealt with injuries. You brought up the fact that career high in 40 points last year. He dealt with some shortened seasons ahead of that, so it's not necessarily all on him there. But regardless, that's kind of where his point totals are at. How much of this right now has to do with more so we could probably just improve on this guy? You look at some other teams around the league. Yeah, maybe you've got some of these guys fitting in minor spots where you're like, okay, yeah, you might be a decent player down the road, but can we flip you now for somebody that can come in and help us today and help us on this cup run rather than 3, 4, 5 years down the road? And how much of this might just be the fact that they kind of look at him and don't see the ceiling being where maybe they feel like it needs to be for a guy who was a second overall pick, a guy that you're looking at 22 years old thinking, hey, maybe this guy could be an impact player someday. Maybe it's just not quite there and they don't see it being the case. Is that kind of where yourself and Rangers fans are at? Do you think the organization might be there, or is it more of just let's upgrade on this player now and take advantage while we can while the iron's hot?
Yeah, so I certainly don't think it's that they're giving up on Kakko. I don't think he could turn into a good player. And I think when you look at kind of just to go a little bit wider, like the Rangers rebuild, let's call it as a whole, I think the biggest issue they've had is how are they developing these young players, right? They got him and Alexis Lafreniere, obviously kind of the two biggest ones you look at, and you go, okay, neither of them have played on the first power play at all, like since coming into the league, because they have
Mhm.
Kreider, they have Panarin, they have Fox, they have Zibanejad, like so there's nowhere for them really to get up there. And especially when you look at Kaapo Kakko, like he even made a point of saying after the season last summer, like, I want top 6 minutes, I want power play time. And that just hasn't happened. And a guy like that, like a big part of what he's going to bring is on the power play. Um, and just the fact that he hasn't been able to get ice time here. And even you look at it, like that's not going to change after this year. Like there's no one on that top power play that you see leaving in the next couple of years. So even if I look at like 2, 3 years down the road, okay, maybe then he starts getting power play time. But at that point, he's like 24, 25. It's like, do you really want to wait if there's a team out there that says, hey, we need young forwards. We can bring him in. We can give him top line minutes. We can give him power play 1 minutes. So I don't think the Rangers want to move on from him. It's just like, it's been a very awkward time kind of having two top two picks come in at a time that
Yeah.
you also have like pretty elite players. Like it just doesn't happen that often where you're almost just kind of stuck because you look at it, even just like their normal forward lines, like you're not bumping Chris Kreider down to the third line. And briefly he was a couple of years ago. Like you're not bumping Artemi Panarin down there. So they tried to switch both Kaapo and Lafreniere to the right side, and it has worked a little bit. But at the same time, it's like they're not getting any power play time. So I think that's maybe one of the big things that's kind of hurt their development and obviously hurt their output a little bit is not being able to play on the power play at all. Um, but yeah, I think it's just kind of been an awkward fit. So I think they're more than anything, they want to look out there and see like, look, he was a number two pick. Like it's hard to say that at this point now that he's a few years into the league, right? Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
at the same time, like that talent level is there. So if there's a team that looks at it and says, hey, like we really want him, we think he can be like an elite player for us, I think that's kind of what they want to figure out right now.
All right, well, let's go with the final part of this. And this isn't based on anything factual. So, for people watching, we're not taking perfect examples and applying it to this one, more just kind of speculating based on where markets are at right now, what we've seen players go for in the past, and maybe potentially what Matt's hopes are here going forward. But let's say you're in the front office or you're around the front office. What is it that you're looking for as a Rangers fan or a Rangers GM to get in return for Kaapo Kakko? Now, just as example here, are you looking to just get rid of the $2.1 million, bring back some assets like picks and stuff like that to be able to turn around and get something else? Or do you think maybe you could find another player that can help you right now using Kaapo Kakko as a trade piece?
So I don't think there's any way you can trade Kaapo Kakko without getting a top six winger right now. Like I said, they are making a run. He's still a useful player, even if he's not living up to that number two hype. Like if you're taking that off of your roster as a contending team, you need to replace him with someone better. And like obviously the name that keeps getting floated out there is Elias Lindholm. Like I
Yeah.
personally am a fan of his. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Rangers the more I think about it, just with the fact of like he's about to get paid. And I don't think you're trading Kaapo Kakko for a rental. Like I don't. But there are some other names out there. Like I mentioned Frank Vetrano, who's still under contract for another year after this year. And we already saw how well he worked with Kreider and Zibanejad. Like that could be an option of like the start of a trade out there. It's just if you are getting rid of him, you need to find someone that you can put on that top line who can play the right side that can go well with those two. because that's just something that they've really been missing since Pavel Vucinovic. And that's how they're going to maximize the value for Kakko at this point. Because I don't think you can just trade him for picks or prospects or anything, especially when you're trying to win right now.
All right, well, that'll do it for today's video. If you did enjoy the content here, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll have much more content like this leading up to the trade deadline, at the trade deadline, as well as live watch-alongs and daily free picks on our live show Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. You won't want to miss any of that. So like the video here today, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you get notified every time we go live, and videos just like this one drop on the channel as well. I want to see in the comments below. I know Matt wants to see in the comments below. First of all, would you trade Kaapo Kakko? And second of all, what are you getting in return for him? Let's see those comments below. I want to see where you guys are at on the value of this. Thanks for watching the video today. Enjoy the rest of your evening.